So how are you?
All right, we're doing all right. Yeah, how are you?
All good. I want to start by showing this absolutely gorgeous picture of you, which I've just looked at, and now, of course, I can't find it. I'm going to give it to Vasso, wearing shoulder pads.
Do you want to start? Is that me and my band?
Yes, but I mean, yeah, this one. And I think everybody should have an opportunity to see this unbelievably cute picture. Posted on Instagram, so public indeed. And for anybody who's just not been paying attention, Robert, who was born as recently as 1980, is a renowned and very acclaimed singer-songwriter, writing not only songs for himself, but also performing his own music, a good old-fashioned rock star in sort of normal language. He's best known as a lead singer as the UK electronic rock band called Tempo Shark. And in 2010, you began working with Russell. Oh, no, you didn't. You began working with Carl Friedman in Margate, having put aside the public face of music for art. Now, we're going to pause there because we're going to go now, or I'm going to go to Russell, who was born 1 year later than you in 1981, who is a very distinguished actor with numerous television, film, and stage credits. Best known for being in the original version of The History Boys, which of course went on forever as this incredibly acclaimed theatrical performance as well as a film, Him and Her, Looking, and Sherlock. He's also starred as Harry Doyle in the drama thriller series Quantico on the ABC network. And you two have been joined at the hip since you started in 2018 Talk Art, a huge success. Conducted 111 interviews with notable guests including Elton John, Stephen Fry, Lena Dunham, James Corden, Ian McKellen, and many, many more. Artists, performers, writers, and you have had 1.5 million downloads, which makes my eyeballs tremble, from 77 different countries. So this is, by any standards, the massive success. And it is one of the most popular art podcasts anywhere in the world. Did I miss anything?
Yeah, go on, Rob.
We're heading towards 2.5 million downloads now.
You are kidding.
Yeah, I think we've had quite a lot more in lockdown.
Excellent. That is, I mean, that's incredible. So, I mean, can I have your autographs, please? Do people ask for autographs anymore? Well, anyway, I'm going to ask for your autograph.
You also forgot to add that you were one of our distinguished guests recently, which was a huge success that so many people loved, including my mum, who wants to hang out with you. She's a really good litmus test for every guest that we have on. If my mum's like, oh, I like her, I want to see her, I want to hang out with her, then I know it's a good episode.
My mum as well. My mum's obsessed.
Well, listen, I love your mums. Thank you, Robert and Russell's mums, for being so generous. And you are, the next thing I want to say is, because people who haven't had the experience that I have had of doing a talk art, I mean, I understand, it makes me laugh hugely because it's incredibly simple, but it's very, very impressive. So the trick is you smother your guests, if you call them that. I don't know what you call them, people who you talk to. And you start off by saying, Robert, do you know you are the best musician I have ever heard, ever. And so by this time you're going, oh, do you think so? And then you go, not only are you the best musician, but you are brilliant about talking about art. So by this time it's like, really? After 60 seconds, your speakers or your guests are putty in your hands. And from that, it's plain sailing. I swear to God, you could have asked me anything, either of you, and I've said, yes, absolutely. What do you want to know? It's a very brilliant technique, and very one that, of course, makes the person you're talking to feel very comfortable. but also it's very unusual. I've never had anybody do that to me before. So it makes it very pleasurable, and bravo.
Thanks. Well,
I think that comes out of the fact that we really carefully choose our guests, and they're people that we want to champion and celebrate because we think their contribution to the world of art or music or whatever industry they're in has been such a massive contribution. And we're genuinely fans of them. Like, we don't just, I think the difference with other journalists is they've been told by their editor, go and interview this person. But at the same time, I think we still try and be critical to a point where we do loads of research and we are serious about our guests, but we do love them. So it makes it slightly easier.
Well, I mean, thank you. And I mean, of course, then your love is reciprocated in, humongous quantities. I speak for myself, but I'm sure I speak to everybody else you've ever talked about. I mean, forever, whenever I hear your names, I'll be going, oh yes, they're marvelous. I mean, you've got all these people walking around the world going, oh, they're utterly brilliant, which of course you are. But it's very interesting in this strange time that we live in, when I think, one of the things that COVID, I found in this lockdown, not in this one, all the lockdowns, is that you can actually have an honest conversation and really talk about how you're feeling and what it's like with people that you don't know so well, that aren't your, close friends or family, because there's a kind of underlying connection amongst everybody about this really tough situation. And if it's not tough for you, you probably know somebody else who it is tough for. And anyway, you just need to read the newspapers and you start crying. It's just a horrible, horrible situation. And so I think it's really nice. And I'm just going to tell you a very funny story. When I was at the Serpentine, we did a show with Gilbert and George, and the first time they wrote to me, they've signed Lots of Love. And I come from the training in the public sector, but it was a very old-fashioned training, and you always wrote yours sincerely. And when I saw Gilbert and George signing Lots of Love, I thought, my God, this is incredible. They're talking about love in this formal setting. And it was a kind of moment when everything changed. Anyway, you've changed it again. So going back to how you met in 2008 at a dinner honouring Tracy Emin, what did you see in each other over and above? Yes, a shared interest in art. What can you articulate the connection in any other way, or was it really the art that allowed you to then explore what is clearly a very close friendship?
It was a very nuanced interaction with art that we connected on. We were there at the Tracy Emin retrospective, which was up in Edinburgh at the National Theatre there, at National Museum there, and we connected over the titles that Tracy named her works, which is so superfluous to the whole oeuvre that she has, but so many people miss them. But we were obsessed with these titles, and we started connecting over title drawings and neon drawings and this and that, and it's suddenly I don't think there's anyone else in the world right now who will get me as much as this person met, because it was a real kindred spirit moment of oh my God, you're as weird as I am, this is really fun.
Yeah, I mean, and of course, how lovely. It's always lovely to find somebody who shares one's obsession. I mean, it's fantastic. And Robert, what was it? What did you similarly think? Oh my God, he's fascinated. Russell's fascinated by the titles.
I distinctly remember sitting in a bar actually after the main dinner, and we were with our now ex-boyfriends, but we were all there together, and the other two were just completely in silent and bemused while we spoke for an hour and a half about these titles. And I remember it being almost like a competition. It would be but do you know this one? And do you know that one? And do you know that? And it was really bizarre because at the time, I'm not even sure many of her books had most of her drawings even published. But we'd both done so much research. Like, I think I'd even been to White Cube's like headquarters, and they let me go on the computer and like go through their inventory. You know, it was like we were both like totally obsessed, and we were trying to like buy things at the time for our collections, and we were saving up money, and we both were kind of rising in our respective music and acting careers. So I think any money we were making, we were like buying her work. So it was really competitive as well, and it was really fun. And then I remember it expanding into other artists, and then we would like egg each other on, and you know, we'd start researching. I at the time was obsessed with women in art, as I still am, but you know, mainly collecting female artists' work. And yeah, I think Russell would then discover people that I might like. I would think about his taste, and we'd constantly, you know, talk to each other through any way possible.
How amazing! And did your partners get rather jealous?
Yeah.
That you had this you created obviously a very close bond right from the beginning. And then did you?
They didn't know what was going on. I think they were just very confused and a bit like, is this an issue or not? we were like, they were just like, we'd connected on this deeper level that no one else understood. So for us, it was like, you don't get it. You're never going to get it. You're never going to understand.
I think poor things, they must have been traumatized. In short, they were traumatized.
They're gone now. So
yeah, exactly. Whatever.
I love but I also think it was always a sibling kind of bond we had. And I feel like that's what was odd about it. It wasn't like we fancied each other. There was nothing like that. It was just very much this kind of like brotherly kind of connection, geekdom, you know, a bit like when you're a sort of a kid or something and you have like a geeky friend and you're both into science or, you know, the same kind of thing. That was our bond.
Yes. But it's wonderful, actually, because in a way it kind of makes sense of the world when you have that connection where you can say, because also it becomes part of an ongoing conversation. And that, I think that's the most thrilling things. And so at what point did you decide to do the podcast?
Well, we started, I'd done a podcast with Rob. Rob got asked to do this one talking about collecting, and they specifically went to him because of Counter Editions, which is the site which Rob is a director of, which has these incredible artist multiples.
Yes.
And stuff. People haven't heard of it. And they asked him to come on and said, do you want to talk about collecting and why people collect? And he said, yeah, why don't I get my mate Russell on? He's collected from Counter Editions. We both collected there, and now I'm running it. So we came on and we did this podcast, and we were meant to be interviewed by these two people, and they didn't get a word in edgeways. It was just me and Rob basically talking to each other, talk. And afterwards, our mums, and you'll realise that our mums are big influences and all.
No, the big influence. I love your mothers.
They went, we've learned more in this 45-minute chat about why you're obsessed with art and what it is about art that makes you tick, that you need to go off and do this by yourself. So me and Rob were like, well, let's just get a studio and let's just do a thing where we're going to check in weekly about art shows we've seen, what we've read, what's kind of cool upcoming, and we do reviews. So we started, and then we was like, well, let's just bring our friends in and see what they think of art and what art means to them. And then it just grew, and we had so many amazing guests at the beginning, like Louisa Buck and Sadie Coles, Michael Craig Martin Creed. We had our friends come in, Pedro Pascal, Sarah Hadland, Laura Aikman, loads of like just complete diverse range of talent in culture, different voices coming from all different directions, but finding art eventually. And suddenly we're like, oh, we know what this is now. We know what this is. This is just a celebration where people can get together and celebrate all the things about art that excites them, whatever that is, however high, however low. We are not saying anything that is academic. We're not saying we're like, we're just trying to cut out all the stuff so it doesn't feel like a members club, and so that people can be geeks about it as much as me and Robert.
It's amazing. It's really, because it's completely unique. And the fact that it's so successful really matters. I mean, I always think that numbers matter, not because it's a show-off thing, but it means that you're engaging with and connecting with a wide audience. So therefore, what you do has a value and a reach that makes it important. Doesn't mean to say that things that aren't successful, in some cases, it doesn't matter if you have, 5 people and that's it.
Yeah.
But if it's about connectivity, then you really want to have a lot of people listening, and you do. Amazing.
And I think for a niche subject like art, it is kind of incredible how we have achieved such listenership, such a devout audience that connect every week. And we've got like a book coming out that's available for pre-order now on Amazon if anyone's listening, which you can go on there.
No, we're going to do a whole book promotion. Let's have
Go
a
on.
moment, ladies and gentlemen, a moment. Now, Russell and Robert, I think you've got a book coming out. Do tell me more about the book.
Rob?
The book is hilarious because it's actually, I'm really, really, really proud of it now. But when we started the journey, we were supposed to, in our heads, just be sort of, doing transcripts of existing interviews that were on the podcast. And we'd always had this idea that because it was a podcast and you don't get to see the art, a book would make sense. Because the Instagram that we have at Talk Art became very popular with listeners because it was a way that they don't just have to Google the artist, they can just quickly use it as a reference point. But, as you mentioned, we've done like 120 or more episodes now because some aren't even out yet. But so, following down the Instagram feed, it's difficult. So we thought a book would be a great way of putting all the images there for people to see alongside the transcriptions. But the publisher was like, no way, you have to write a book. And we want it to be a kind of handbook to art now and your perspective.
You're kidding.
Different themes. So in the beginning of the first lockdown, Russell and I said to each other, have we got time to write a book on top of like our jobs? But we thought, oh, well, it's lockdown. Maybe it's good for us to have a bit of a focus. So in the end, we wrote half the book each and we wrote 50,000 words plus. And it's all new content. So it's this really amazing, we had to dig really deep and think about what we feel about art and who we love and why we love them. But it was definitely...
That's extraordinary. And so when is it coming up? What's the price? Who's the publisher?
The publisher's Hachette and it's Octopus, which do all Tate's publications. And they recently did Jerry Salt's How to Be an Artist publication. It's available for pre-order now all over the place. It ranges between £17 to £20, depending where you're looking for it. It comes out May 13th, and it's really, really exciting. I mean, as Rob was saying, we really were daunted by it to begin with because we didn't know what it was, but because we thought the pressure of like, are we saying we know everything about art history? Are we saying this is definitive? And we're like, no. The publisher was like, no, this is just your take on the contemporary art world, what's happening right now, what you like, and take the pressure off yourself and just celebrate that. And we were like, oh, okay. As soon as you did that, it's like, we're not saying this is definitive. We're not saying we are like absolute experts in everything. We're just saying this is what we like. This is our podcast. Come on this journey with us and look at who we're looking at.
Yeah, brilliant. How exciting. Well, I mean, I want to ask you whether I think you're thinking about starting a foundation, Russell, and have you discussed opening a gallery? Is that part of the big plan?
I mean, there's a lot of discussions. I mean, the opportunities coming up now are very exciting across the board with how to move Talk Art further, how to bring that into like an art world setting. And yes, I would love. I mean, I'm an avid collector, as you know. I think I DM you a lot and hassle you, but I'd love the idea of having a space that people could come and see my art collection. I love the idea of supporting emerging artists and creating an opportunity for people to do residencies that, financially, if I get a position, hopefully a bit further down the line, that I can support that. That'd be really exciting. Me and Rob would love like our own sort of project space or something. I think that we're kind of looking at that. So there's lots of space being made for us to explore at the moment, which is really exciting.
I think that sounds amazing. And one of the things that occurred to me is that, art provision in schools maybe is not very strong, let's put it like that. And whether you could kind of transform Talk Art, so that you could connect to children, to people who are studying, young people who are studying. Because, when I was growing up, millennia ago, there was no connection to museums. There were no connection to contemporary artists. Well, that was the time. I'm not sure there is that. But the question is now how that availability, that access, that understanding of people, that this is something for them. It's really your ethos, but for a younger generation, and a younger generation that maybe really doesn't have access to it.
I think a lot of our listeners are actually younger than we realized. And there's loads of like teenagers and people in their late
Fantastic.
and people in their mid-20s, that kind of age group, who are studying, or even they might even be studying like maths or a different subject, who actually secretly want to be an artist or do it as a hobby. And since moving the gallery to Margate, I joined the board of Open School East, which is like a
Great. Yes.
in Margate. But there's also a centre called Arts Education Exchange, and both of those spaces offer free courses for artists. So you can do like a master's degree, or you can do kind of equivalent of GCSEs, but for free. And that's so important, I think, to have free arts education, because it's really rare these days. There are some places in London, like the Royal Academy schools, where you can apply, but the uptake, you know, the class size is so small that not everybody gets. And I think with Margate, what's really nice is that people are able to come from disadvantaged backgrounds, you know, people that can't even go to school because they've been expelled either for mental health issues or for, you know, the fact they were just struggling and they haven't been identified yet as being dyslexic or whatever it may be. And then working through those issues with art is so important. So I'm really proud that I'm able to sort of be more connected in Margate. And also Russell's got a house here now. And I know that he's
Great.
involved with those organizations. And I think that will grow in the coming years.
I think we've
I'm really
been,
excited.
thank you. I think we've also been told that a lot of art colleges, art schools, when they first their first days at the college, they're being told to subscribe to Talk Art, make it a part of your kind of research, that you just listen regularly to it, because that conversation will give you loads of ideas. Which that for us, when we've heard that, and we've heard that several times now, feels really. I feel so proud of that we are seen as something that people are recommending for further education, to kind of open up their minds to the world. So that's amazing.
It is amazing. And I'm thinking of the 12-year-olds and the 14-year-olds, you know.
Yeah.
It would be a fantastic resource, because also I think there's nothing more fascinating than hearing the person themselves talk about their subject. I mean, in this case, it happens to be art, whether it's an artist or a gallerist or a director or whatever, writer, curator, and that is just inspiring. You think, and it makes you dream. You think, wow, so it's just thrilling. So how great. Well, the good thing is you've got your army. You've got your armies are like the skins of an onion. You've got your talkers who will, because we're all still swooning from the enjoyment of contributing to Talk Art. Then you've got, all the people who listen. You've got really an incredible group of people, but also globally. How interesting is that? Fantastic. So talking about global superstars. So Talk Art is not only mere mortals like me, but also really, really world famous names like Elton John or Lena Dunham, Ian McKellen, Stephen Fry, and so on. I mean, what makes you talk to people like that as well as people not like that?
I think we try and get such a broad spectrum of voices, because it gives so many access points to so many people. We started off and we thought, should we be really pure with this? Should we just be talking to artists and curators and gallery owners? But then the feeling is that art is for everyone. That's been our ethos. Yeah. And so many people come to art. So you get so many incredible stories. Like Elton John, obviously he is Sir Elton John, but he is one of the world's foremost photography collectors. He is so passionate and so knowledgeable. So having him on was not just the fact that we've got Elton John. We've actually got someone on who's like so learned and exciting and enjoys talking about it. So many people don't have an opportunity to talk about this passion of art in their life, because they're just doing interviews about like their other job, their main job. But this is giving people access to this other side of them. Like Ian McKellen's, we walked around his house. He's got like artists who he supports, who live in his house and are working in little studios. He collects Lowry. He's hung out with David Hockney. The same as like Stephen Fry's got all these incredible stories of hanging out with Gilbert and George. Hanging out with Francis Bacon telling him stories. It's like, that's why you talk to so many people, as long as they've got a connection to art, because we've had a lot of people now go, oh, will you talk to this our talent? And we're like, oh, what's their connection?
I'm sure.
To art? Oh, well, they've got a book coming out. What's the book about? Or the book's about, whatever. Okay, but do they collect art? Do they go to art galleries? They like Van Gogh. Okay, well, so I mean, yes, we would love to talk to this person because they've got 20 million followers, and it'd be really exciting for us, like, to get out there. But if they've got nothing of art to talk about, then we're not interested, because we have to be really honest to what our podcast is and what excites us, and that's what excites us is art. And if there's no connection, then there's no point having them on.
And also, I think,
yeah, please.
I think some of the guests that aren't as well known can often be some of the most interesting episodes, because really the show is about sharing stories and sharing a perspective of the world and different perspectives of the world. So we've spoken to, all kinds of people, and that in itself wasn't deliberate. It kind of just naturally grew and happened. And, we've ended up really focusing on like queer artists from around the world, particularly New York at the moment, and the UK, people of color and Black artists. And with the whole Black Lives Matter movement this year, we were able to kind of share these stories from different places in the world. And I think it's been really important to be inclusive. And both of us, grew up being gay teenagers who felt like it wasn't acceptable to be gay.
Yeah.
I think we do have this kind of shared solidarity, even though it's not our experience, that some of the guests have. It's really important for us to connect to and learn from their experiences, and to kind of share the platform that is growing all the time with Talk Art with urgent messages like that. And again, it wasn't deliberate, but it's something that has now become, what we've realized has become really important to both of us.
Mm.
I mean, what's so interesting about art is, that community, whatever role you play in that community, you can do anything. An artist can do anything except murder. There is a freedom and an openness and an acceptance that really, I think, is not usual in other walks of life or in other situations. And that's incredibly important, that opportunity to experiment, to press the boundaries, to engage, to do step outside what's deemed, acceptable or possible. And that, that's a way of pushing the world forward. So whenever you collect a work of art, do you automatically ask the artist on to talk art, or is it less formulaic than that?
I mean, I think sometimes there's been artists that we've connected to, that I love, that I've acquired a work, and then I'm like, I think they're an incredible voice, let's have them on. There's other artists whose work I haven't got or collect, but you especially when it comes to emerging artists, that's what Rob was saying earlier, is that's what we really champion. We love discovering these emerging voices that have got so much to say, because that connects with so many younger people, that connects with so many people in the world that are finding their way, because these artists are just starting off. So as a collector, that's what drives me, is emerging artists, supporting them, encouraging that work and seeing where they go and blossom. There's nothing more exciting than going on that journey with them. And if we can be a platform for them to talk about their practice and celebrate them while they're at a really emerging, really fertile stage in their career, then that is something that I'm honored to do.
Yeah, and also I think episodes that often people get the most excited about. And usually, the younger artists, neither of us have collected, because they're kind of so young as well, and you're just kind of following what they're doing. But it is interesting the amount of people that have written after being on the show. Like even today, one of the artists wrote to me and said, I just want you to know, we've had like 4 or 5 people write to us this week, and it's quite massive opportunities that are coming thanks to the platform you gave us. And that's what we care about, is really like spreading the word and letting people, show how great they are, because they inspire us and they're really exciting, new voices. And that's what we need in the world. So it's less about collecting and more about just giving them an opportunity to speak, because we're just fascinated in the way, what makes people tick, why are they artists, why are they making work.
Well, and that's really why you're both so engaging. I mean, I believe collectors are born, not made. I don't have the collecting gene, but you were both collecting from a very, very early age. And I think that's absolutely fascinating. When I was at the Serpentine, I always felt that I owned the works for the period they were on exhibition, and I was happy to see them go, because I didn't want to be located in a particular moment, because my life flashes before me or behind me when I look at something, and and my taste is not, it changes, and so I don't like that so much. But you know, you've got hundreds of pieces now in your collection, so obviously a museum is absolutely urgent that you open it. And so I also wanted to talk about this interesting thing. There's a wonderful quote by Russell about how perhaps somebody who doesn't go to the theatre gets dressed up, takes a train with all the expectations that entails, saves up maybe for the tickets, gets there, sees a play, and it really isn't very good. However, they're not able to express that because they think, oh, it must be great because it's at this place, the National Theatre, or I don't know where, you know, Royal Court, wherever. And that ability for people to have a view about something that they maybe know about or maybe not is very, very important. Have you ever been in a position where you've really felt, ooh, maybe this is not quite so good, I'm going against the opinion of everybody else, and felt comfortable about saying so?
Within talk art?
Within talk art or outside it? I mean, you know, we've all been in positions where conversations and you think, really?
Well, I mean, if you're talking like that quote was basically saying that there is a responsibility for theatre for stuff to be good, and a lot of people do come to things, commercial theatre especially, for the first time, and they go and sit there and they're bored, but they can't. As you're saying, they think, well, it's there, so it must be brilliant, and it's just me that's got the problem. It's like, no, and you go to art galleries and you look at thousands of works of art and you don't like any of them, and instead of going like, well, it's me, but then you'll see one thing and you're like, oh wow, I really like that, and that one thing is the thing that you connect to, and that's absolutely brilliant. I mean, I think, you know, things where you thought, oh, I shouldn't be doing this, is probably when they've offered you a lot of money for something you don't believe in. And you go, am I going to sell myself to the devil to buy more art? Fundamentally, basically, is what that money's going on. Or do I turn it down? And sometimes you make decisions that like factor into that equation, I guess. But fundamentally, no, as talk art, we connect with each other, we offer up our guests to each other, we discuss it, we talk to the guests and ask, like, timing wise, what feels good for them to come on, because a lot of people are like we spoke to someone today and I was like, come on now, and they were like, well, I've got a show coming up later in the year, can we do it then? I'm like, yeah, great, and we build it up around that so they feel confident, because a lot of artists aren't public speakers, and we're expecting we're expecting quite a lot of people to come on and be as open and talk about everything and articulate their practice. Some emerging artists haven't even worked out really what they're doing yet, they're just doing it. So for them to put the pressure on them to articulate it feels very vulnerable and exposing. So we don't want to do that either. So it's just about sensitivity and celebration, and we're never trying to catch people out, we're never trying to expose the dark underbelly of the art world. We're just going, we love you, you're brilliant, we want everyone else to think you're brilliant, so let's just talk about that. And they're all like, if people are like, oh, I'm really unhappy with what I said, we're like, we'll take it out. Everything is editable, everything, you know what I mean? It's like we look after, protect and nurture all of our guests, because fundamentally they are the reason talk art is a success. So we all are in this together.
Yeah,
it's very generous.
I remember going to the Turner Prize once, maybe about 11 years ago or something, and I didn't like any of the 4 entries. And I remember walking around it and being so confused, because I thought at that point I kind of had, you know, developed my taste and I really got it. And I just thought, how can I not like any of them? So I really spent a while afterwards, like trying to understand what each artist was saying, you know, where they've been before, like the journey they've been on to get to that Turner Prize show. And slowly, 2 of them I actually began to get really into. And one of them, I mean, I won't say who it is, but like one of them became one of my favorite artists. So it also shows that sometimes your initial response of like, I don't like this, I don't get it, might actually be because it's challenging you, or it's something new that you don't understand yet. Because often the things you might immediately like, you like them because you understand it, or you get it because you already, you know, have experienced something similar before. But actually, I think it can be really important to challenge yourself and to question why you don't like something, because maybe within that, you're going to develop yourself and challenge yourself and grow, and that artist will help you see a new perspective on the world. So sometimes not liking something might be because it's challenging you, you know, to grow and change. So.
It's a very good point. And, you know, it's the thing about art, whether it's visual, the arts, is, it requires effort.
Yeah.
It really requires effort. You walk in and you go, oh, I don't like this, or oh, I do like it. You're not going to get anything really back from it. And I'm always incredibly admiring of people who really put that effort in and really get to the bottom of it. And of course, and it's transformative. Do you think this period of COVID has the opportunity to be transformative in ways that we can't quite see yet?
Yeah, 100%. I feel like through all adversity in history, the best art has been made because artists are on the front line when it comes to capturing public, the public consensus, and all the work that's been made through, especially Black Lives Matter, and through COVID, and through the Trump presidency, and through all these challenging, incredibly traumatic experiences that we are, internationally feeling now. Art is being made, art is being pushed forward, and art is the discussion. Culture moves everything quicker than any sort of government propaganda. A song, a painting, a work of art, a film, you know what I mean? A book. They can change public's perception on anything so much quicker than any government can.
Yeah. And I feel really strongly that art is always ahead of everything else. So if you want to know, the temperature of a society, what's going on in the world, you have to look at the art of the time. And also that art will last beyond all of our lifetimes and outlive, you might forget the name of a politician, but you will remember the artwork. And the only important thing, I think, with contemporary art, with the society we live in now, is to acknowledge and recognize that artists are important, because actually artists often get completely overlooked, for the whole of their lifetimes. They can be underpaid and under-supported, but still they continue. And I think we need to do everything we can to nurture and support artists at all points in their careers. And that is the responsibility. Without the artist, there's no art world. There is no gallery. There is no museum. There is nothing. And I think that can easily get forgotten, when things of power and greed and money and all of these different elements get involved. But actually, it does come down to the artist. So that's what people need.
And also, art is about connecting to something which is beyond the material. And, at this particular time when religion doesn't play such a strong role, connecting to something which is beyond oneself, or connecting to something, and through that connection coming back to oneself, is incredibly, incredibly important. And artists, of course, help us to do that. And so, obviously, the performing arts is very important because of Russell's enormous expertise in that area. But are you thinking of going into, say, have you thought about architects or designers, maybe designers of objects or designers in fashion or literature? Ian McKellen, I'm sure some of your guests also write. In fact, I know they do. But is that interesting to you to expand in the cultural?
All of them. All of everyone you've.
Excellent.
We are open to every conversation, whatever factor of life you're coming from. The most inspiring people to us when it comes to collectors is the Vogels, Herb and Dorothy Vogel, and a story of them in New York State, where one was a librarian and the other one worked for the post office, and they accumulated in their tiny apartment one of the most incredible, fundamentally important contemporary art collections of the time in America.
Yes.
And it all got donated to a museum. Now that means that, well, we should be able to talk to someone who works in the post office who saves up the money and collects art. We should be able to talk to someone who's in the library. When it comes to our guests, there's no hierarchy. It's just passion. And wherever you come from, whatever factor, as long as you have a passion for art and you are open to talking about that and expressing what that is in you and what it brings out of you and what that gives to the world, then we're open to talking to you. There is no rules we've set ourselves. You just need to know art.
We recently interviewed Yinka Ilori at the London Podcast Festival, and he's someone who really is interdisciplinary and kind of crosses architecture, design. Like, he's even got his own codes now in domestic, homewares and things like that, making rugs and tablecloths and dishcloths, all kinds of things. He's amazing, and that interview was really exciting. And I think talking to architects is a really interesting one too, because
Yeah.
they are often inspired by art. And, you know, we also speak a lot about Bauhaus and how, you know, bringing together different disciplines to inform each other is such a positive thing. So without doubt, I mean, actually probably the core blueprint of what art guest would be is someone that's kind of open to all different realms. And there's also something else I quickly wanted to say, which is something I personally love about Talk Art is that it's created a space to hear the voice of artists and to kind of give them the respect and dignity that they deserve, regardless of how big they are, or even if they are really huge, to kind of give them a space to be a human and to hear the stories from childhood and to hear the kind of soul aspect of who they are. So it's not just all about the glitzy, you know, glamour of like a big museum opening, to actually hear the human side of who they are and the daily journey they go on to actually struggle and, you know, battle with making art. And that for me is the most interesting side of it too. I think to kind of give artists that respect and to create this kind of time capsule of voices that hopefully if we can just continue doing this, because it does seem to never end, because every week we're thinking of 10 guests to interview. I feel like it's built up this really fascinating archive of interviews, you know, outside of a kind of organization like the BBC or, you know, a kind of corporate organization. It's been quite a fun personal document.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's extraordinary because there's a lightness of touch, I think, which is so important. It's not in any way pompous or, you know, that openness is really incredibly engaging. And where do you stand on the whole debate about social media and the damage of social media as it often plays out in really difficult ways? I mean, at the moment you use Instagram, there will be a new Instagram at some point, and I'm sure you'll then use it. But what I mean, I know both of you post a lot. I engage with social media in a homeopathic way, you know, from time to time I engage with it, but I don't immerse myself in it. What do you have a view about that? Do you have a view about the advantages, but also some of the disadvantages, or even a feeling of responsibility?
Well, for me, I think Instagram is one of the greatest inventions for the art world ever. The way it's expanded the art world, the way you have access to see so many people from around the world making art. My most exciting thing is going to another country, seeing a show, an artist's work, mainly a group show if it's an emerging artists, and then finding them on Instagram. And then within like 24 hours, you're doing a studio visit. It's like the most like exciting access point suddenly, because it cuts out everyone and it's just this conduit straight to the person you really want to speak to. So I think Instagram's amazing. I think during the pandemic, everybody's trying their best with you know, online shows, online viewing rooms, online museum shows. Everyone's getting really working towards creating the best visions of exhibitions. You know, like I was obsessed with Toyin Ojedetola's show Canterbury Theory at the Barbican. Not many people got to see it, but they made an incredible moving piece where she narrated it and you went through the show, and it was like that was a work of art in itself. I think so many people are doing that now on top of everything else, and that feels really exciting because the art's getting out just beyond being there in the moment. It's like this is securing its legacy.
The only thing I think is that there's a slight downside in that when I go to actual exhibitions, because obviously we've been in the lockdown for so long now. So for example, when we came and interviewed you last year, Julia, at the gallery, and we got to walk around the office, but then the actual spaces at ROPAC, and we saw the exhibition, you just can't experience that online. You know, it is something so different about seeing an artwork in front of you. But what I think is great about Instagram is it might get you to the exhibition. It's like a great tool to sort of learn from and discover new things to go and see. But I think the thing people have to remember is you still need to go and see the exhibition. It's really important. But I think what I really don't like about Instagram is when people will go to a museum, say the Tate, and they'll stand in front of a painting, 1 minute, take a picture with it, and then leave the museum. A few invigilators, like students that I know, have told me that happens all the time. That when you walk in, people just walk in, take a picture and leave. And that's not the point. I mean, you can't just use art to get more likes. It's like really, I think people really need to spend time actually going to shows, you know, even just supporting their local art scenes and finding out, you know, in the area where they live, what galleries are on, you know, things like that. You have to remember that there is a real world outside of all of digital.
Yes. Well, I'm so grateful to you both for talking to me and allowing me to ask you questions that I wasn't able to ask you when we last met because I was doing the talking. Thank you for being so incredibly engaging and generous, as always. And I love the program, everybody does, and huge congratulations on your enormous success. I am going to study your book carefully, and also, of course, listen to more of your podcasts. And so thank you both very, very, very much.
Thank you, Julia. Pleasure.
The pleasure is all mine. So while our galleries may be closed temporarily, we remain committed to staying in touch. We're excited to be launching a series of online projects. Stay tuned for the latest information on our website and social media. Thank you all for watching.
Bye.
Bye.